Thank you for listening to this recording of the Master Plan comments of the Public Workshop number 2 that occurred on January 30th, 2018. The agenda for the meeting included these elements. The last meeting occurred on December 1st. And it included a public forum and a workshop. So comments were gathered in response sheets and also on written maps. At the same time, stakeholder input was also gathered during 14 meetings. And you can see all the groups that were discussed that met with the design team at those times. Here's the response sheet. 26 responses were collected. They were summarized, and this is available. Anybody who's interested in this. The planning area was discussed, and there was consideration for potential expansion areas. Through that discussion, the planning effort will look at a 5 to 10 year redevelopment strategy for the Heritage District itself, and also provide some input for long-range planning of the area west of the Heritage District you see outlined where the lumberyard occurs today. No consideration will occur for any other areas, north of the district or east. Issues were summarized, and you see them broken down here by category and also by times mentioned. In terms of land use, the top issue was strengthening and increasing downtown retail. Transportation, it was solving parking and transportation flow and congestion. And then policy, it was maintenance and also amenities. A market analysis was developed by the design team, and here are a few takeaways from that analysis. There are strengths to build off of, the high labor force, the relative affluence of Gilbert compared to other East Valley cities. And there are some challenges, the location of the district itself and the need for more balanced uses, so it doesn't simply become a restaurant and a dining area, but includes other uses. There's some strategic steps that are being suggested, and the key piece of this is really a focus in the next 5 to 10 years in office development, looking at a public gathering spaces to focus development around, and then finally solving the traffic and circulation issues. Those are economic issues. A market analysis included a 10-year forecast of the amount of development potential for each of the types of uses that you see indicated on the left side: restaurant, bar, office, multifamily, and hotel, and a range is given, a low and a high. The good news is that there's a considerable market, and it appears that any development that is suggested within the next 5 to 10 years can meet this demand. Transportation was also analyzed. The first was to look at auto traffic and average daily trips, the amount of cars and trucks moving up and down Gilbert or Elliott Road, indicated here. And also looking at the future. The town has a model and is anticipated in 2035. That model anticipates a 30% increase of traffic without any additional capacity. So more congestion on Gilbert in particular. To relieve that, there are some options. Transit, whether it's a passenger rail system with a stop in the Heritage District or bus rapid transit, will give some relief, along with moving people out of automobiles into bikes and walking. So the town currently has a bike master plan showing these existing facilities on the canal anticipated changes with bike lanes and shared lanes on the areas where you see the green line. Land use was also analyzed, and a recognition that the town owns 57% of the area where you see indicated in yellow. That's really the focus of the planning study. And then we reflected and looked at the areas within the district as a whole and did an analysis of areas where we anticipated high potential of change within the next 5 to 10 years. And the areas where there's low potential, and in fact in many areas no potential for change, we see in the dark gray areas. Opportunities and constraints were then developed, those things you build off of and those things you minimize. And they really need to reflect and do reflect the project goals, starting with strengthening and increasing downtown retail. A key component of downtown retail is addressing drive-by traffic and as one of the key elements. And we need to right-size that. So we don't want too much or too little. Really, the sweet spot is anywhere from 8,000 to 15,000 trips a day. We want to get the kind of environment you see in the illustration. With that, we looked at where we can meet that condition from 8,000 to 15,000. There, frankly, are none. As Gilbert becomes more and more busy, it becomes less pedestrian friendly and less retail friendly. And current roadways, because of their dead-end nature or lack of connectivity, also have too little traffic. So you see Vaughan, Page, Ash, and Elm. Moving on to public spaces, the areas where you do have a considerable amount of parks, civic, and community space are illustrated in this diagram. There's a lot of those, generally west of Gilbert, but there are no parks and plazas east of the Gilbert Road, and what could be done to address that issue. Parking and transportation opportunities and constraints were also assessed, and this is a key component of this entire planning study. Gilbert is a singular route through the district. There is some limited access through existing residential areas or along Juniper Avenue today, but there is no west side access, largely due to the railroad barrier, and what can be done to resolve that issue to give more of a balanced access to the entire district. Transferring people out of cars is identified by the community, so we also assess that in terms of opportunities and constraints. A lot of comments about the difficulty of walking along Gilbert. It's not pedestrian friendly, it's not bike friendly, largely due to the high traffic volumes and also the barrier created by the railroad track. And the idea here is to look at opportunities for parallel routes to that roadway. Not forget Gilbert, but look for other ways, Neely, along Paul, maybe Ash or Burke, to connect to from the canal down to Elliott Road. With that background information and assessment, the master planning team developed a series of concepts. And so the focus of these concepts is really intended to look at things that can occur within the next 5 to 10 years. And really focus also on addressing those town-owned parcels. So a map was developed and it separates essential public amenities and key redevelopment areas. Successful districts or downtowns follow a recipe that suggests that to leverage the highest and best use of redevelopment parcels, you need to build the public amenities, increase value, and also improve livability. So let's look at these individually by category, starting with the essential public amenities. You see 5 of those, and let's go through the character and the key points of each of those. So this is also in response to some of the issues that have been identified by the community, and so we're loosely calling this the living room. The plaza, where you can have a farmer's market or other uses that have been desired for the area on a reserved permanent basis. In addition, It needs to be to use an overused term, iconic space where people instantly recognize it. So the place for a Christmas tree, for example, that becomes Instagram worthy. That's what this area should be. It should also not ignore some of your assets. The water tower is very important as part of the identity of the Heritage District, the Hale Center as well, and the future passenger rail may also contribute to the character of this living room plaza. They should be strengthened and unified. The plaza area suggested occurs where you see the green coloring that would extend from Page all the way up to Vaughan and incorporate those roadways as part of the plaza space. To maximize the use of this space, Ash Street is suggested to be relocated so it aligns with the current alignment that goes between the university building and the parking garage. The Commons is a second space, and the common space is different from the living room in that it is really intended to be the focus for nightlife activity, dining and entertainment, and a dining and entertainment amenity. So as the market responds to a growing desire for additional dining and entertainment uses, those are suggested to move north of the canal and focus around this space. So the space also has another value in that it provides a window from Gilbert Avenue. So the Commons in itself is located about halfway between the Western Canal at the south of this graphic to Juniper on the north, and connects Gilbert Road to Ash Street. It's about 180 feet in width. Improves visibility, so no parcels out back and behind. It includes a couplet roadway, so a low-speed roadway for travel and also curbside parking. It would have buildings oriented to that space, so there wouldn't be parking lots between that roadway or the Commons, and the buildings really engage and provide a comfortable sense of enclosure along the edges. Next is a neighborhood park. The neighborhood park would do this. It would be family friendly and it would be a residential amenity. It fills the void of a lack of open space east of Gilbert, and it would have more of a quiet, intimate, and a multi-use residential focused collection of uses such as play structures or green areas or other elements that you would find in a typical neighborhood park. It would be located at the intersection of Elm and Page. You can see that area today, which is part of your existing parking lots. We recognize that that would remove some parking, but you are building a parking garage north of Vaughan today, which would provide some relief for the loss of parking here. Moving on, tying these spaces together would be a pedestrian and bike system, a parallel route to Gilbert Road, and that's indicated by the green dash line. It would extend from Elliott Road through the district up to the north, past the canal to the Commons, and may in fact extend all the way up to Juniper Avenue. The Paseo should have some common elements or a common thread that links the neighborhoods to the downtown core. And those common thread elements may include landscaping, trees, pavement, so it becomes an easily identifiable corridor throughout the district. We also anticipate a large portion of this would be car-free, the kind of route that somebody would feel comfortable sending an 8-year-old child through the district so that they would be moving through the district with minimal auto disruption or conflict. There are plenty of opportunities to resolve some of the problems within the district, and those are illustrated in this 2 photos, where we'd like to convert some leftover spaces to more joyful places where they have activity or more comfortable to move through. The Paseo route would not be one size fits all through its entire corridor, and you see this diagram going from Elliott all the way up to Juniper again today. It would have 3 segments. Within the northern area that extends from Juniper down to the anticipated new living room plaza, it would be mostly or almost all car-free. And through that area, we would anticipate there might be segments where you may need access to service or loading. And when those uses are adjacent to the area, the car would be, as we describe it, as a guest. It would be low speed, 5 to 10 miles per hour at most, so that there would be a bias towards the pedestrian and the cyclist. There's a segment that needs to cross the track. So that's a barrier that we want to bridge, or actually in this instance, go under. So we're anticipating an underpass. So we know, having worked with Union Pacific before, that it's very difficult to get an at-grade crossing, and it may take very long years, and they probably still not really want you to do it. So a better proposal may be to go under. And so what would that look like? So here's an example from the University of Arizona that incorporates some of the elements that we'd like to see. And key of those is having easy to access gentle grade. So if I'm in a wheelchair, it's at a very comfortable grade to roll up and down. The underpass in itself needs to be special. It can't be dank, dirty. It needs to be free of graffiti, and it needs to be light. So here's an example that Crandall Rambula built in Oregon. This is under a interstate freeway. So this example illustrates a roadway, which concept that we have does not have, but all the other elements that are illustrated would occur within this underpass. Areas for lighting and high quality materials. The underpass in itself would look something like this in this illustration. It would extend from Veterans Park. You see the green on the right, under the Union Pacific Railway, which we try to minimize that crossing distance, and then reappear back up at grade at the water tower plaza itself. South of that area, we'd like to see an enhanced bike facility complement the existing sidewalks. So within this area, we're suggesting what is called a road diet. And when we mean a road diet, that doesn't mean removing auto movement capacity, but auto parking only. So access to all streets, to all residential uses, to all the alleys would be maintained along this segment. And to get access to the school and other uses that are south of Elliott, we would suggest building what's called a protected bikeway, and it would look something like this. And from experience from areas that get high bike riderships through districts, you need to do this. This separates pedestrians, cyclists, and auto traffic into their own exclusive lanes. And when these are built, you get the highest bike ridership. So what would that look like? So here's an example looking north on Ash from Elliott north. And the intent here, again, with this road diet is not to remove auto traffic lanes. So if you've got 2 lanes today, those would be maintained. The parking lane that is currently on Ash would be converted to a 2-way bike lane that you see on the right side that would be separated by a curb, and it would be raised. So the current curb-to-curb dimension is 30 feet. That improvements would be built within that, and 2 10-foot travel lanes would be maintained. There would be some other enhancements as well to the existing sidewalks. We would anticipate undergrounding of utilities as well within this corridor. But the key component of this is really the bikeway that ties into the planned network on Elliott as part of the bike master plan. Moving on to solve the access issue, which is a fundamental economic development issue that we identified earlier in the presentation. We're suggesting a new roadway. It's illustrated by this blue line. And that blue line would be Vaughan Avenue that does not cross the track, but runs parallel to it and connects up to Neely all the way up to Guadalupe Road. It would be skirting the edge of the Union Pacific Railroad and also occupy a small area of leftover land at the south end of the Neely Traditional Academy. And so you see that alignment. We've done some traffic analysis of this, and the good news for this is it does provide traffic relief, about 7,200 average daily trips a day. And the second part of that good news is that when we look at the fundamentals for drive-by traffic for retail, this is getting close to that sweet spot of 8 to 15,000 trips a day. So it's close, and as a result of this, we think we can get street-oriented retail on this corridor. And that retail would look something like this. So the retail here is intended to fill a void that is absent in the district today. And that is the kind of uses that we often hear people ask for, the kind of uses that people want to stroll and walk along. Experiential retail is often called. The kind of things that you would want to window shop while you're waiting for a hotel, rather not a hotel, but a restaurant seat that you're waiting for along Gilbert today, so a table in those areas. We've heard people mention that many times. And it would be designed in terms of a celebratory kind of character, a festival street, if you will. So those are the key public improvements. So with that, then those would leverage some key redevelopment parcels. And we've broken these down into 3 key areas, and we expect this development to occur within the next 5 years. And so let's start with the North Anchor. The city is anticipating a response for qualifications from the development community sometime in the year. So this is a time-sensitive project area. And so currently it's zoned HVC, which is Heritage Village Commercial, and there may be some adjustments needed to that. So the area is generally from Ash to Gilbert, from Juniper down to the canal. Here's the concept for development, responding to the market. The hot market is office, and this office would be a campus, if you will. So it could be single or multiple tenants with ground floor retail, commons focus for that. And that's the general characteristics, what we'd expect. So looking at it in terms of 3D, on the left is existing, this is looking from the west, and from the east rather towards the parcel, and here's the blow up of that. So generally if you do an office campus, you need a park and reserve, and then the office and retail uses surround that, and it also has that focus for the commons and that window that creates that more additional value adjacent to that area. Here's another view of that space. Again, this responds to current zoning regulations, doesn't require an upzone at all. Good plan always has flexibility, so as part of a developer offering, we'd also suggest that hotel and conference would be suggested for this site. So we know that there's a market up to 320 rooms, so you could easily fit that here, and also have area for expansion. We often find cities don't anticipate success and don't have expansion area. This site is ideal for expansion. Finally, there has been some interest in multifamily, and while you could build multifamily, they're not necessarily compatible with a ground floor entertainment uses because of the noise and activity that extends beyond the hours where people would prefer to have it if you lived on a retail development adjacent to those types of uses. Moving on to the district core, the bean-shaped area. So this is in the heart of the district and includes 2 sub-areas. So again, looking at what the town owns in yellow and what the current zoning is, largely HVC, parcel or 2 may need to be rezoned. And the fine grain character here. So multiple types of uses, whether it's office, multifamily, transit center, and the plaza illustrated. Existing and proposed, looking at the massing. So this is looking from the southeast towards the northwest. You see the university in the background on the left side. and the focus here around a plaza. So this is intimate. It creates enclosure. It's respectful of the tower plaza. There might be a parcel or two where height increases might be considered, as long as they don't overshadow or block views of the tower. There's also a park and ride that may also be a public parking structure, because we're going to lose a little bit of parking with the development of this plaza in your existing parking lots. Looking at Vaughan itself, it's a different type of street. So it's enclosed. It's a little bit more intimate. It would have arcades along the edge. I'll talk about that in a minute. And it's about the same scale as the university building. So it's edge to edge and with connections of arcades that even create a little bit more intimacy. So that's the overall concept. There may be an option as well, but we had office before. It could also be multifamily. So a bit of flexibility as well within this district. Finally, moving down to the south anchor, this is a unique area as well. So the town controls the areas where we anticipate development, and there's two zoning categories here, HVC and single family 6, which is, I believe, 6,000 square feet lots. And it's likely that that area would be rezoned to HVC to have some consistency, along with vacating a portion of Washington Avenue from Ash to the alley to make one contiguous parcel. The concept for that area looks something like this, with retail focused at the intersection of Gilbert and Elliott, maybe an anchor use, and then mixed uses of professional office above retail to the west of that, with a large parking reserve behind it to serve it. So when that's massed out, it would look something like this. So this is looking from the southwest to the northeast, and the retail anchor at the corner of the intersection, the historic crossroads of the community, your 00 address, and the parking behind. Showing a parking structure. Initial phase could be a lot as you get more development within this area and also surrounding parcels. It decides to take a structure. So it may not be needed at day one, but if needed, you could build a parking garage here. Those are the key amenities, the key essential amenities, and the redevelopment areas. There are some details as well, and those have been developed for the Commons and the Living Room Plaza. So for the Commons, we'd anticipate some other elements that would really populate this and make it a very interesting area. And those are listed here, and I'll show you some examples of those with some close-ups. We would like to get some seating here. So this is our activity area. So some of the seating would be adjacent to the uses, but also within the Commons area. Some sections to give you a little bit of the character of that. So shade is an issue. It gets hot in Arizona in the summer, so we need some shade. It might be through trees or covered structure. And water would also be welcome. So this is a place for splashing in water and relief from the desert heat as well. So this is an example from Scottsdale, and these could be turned off and be activity areas when the water is not running. And shade structures can take very many types of characters, but they could be permanent or temporary. The Paseo in itself, that connection north-south, that car-free connection, could have a lot of elements, and maybe there's some historic recall to the area. So maybe have some linear water features, there would be landscaping, shade trees, and they may require some changes to the existing parking lots between the grub stack and sushi brokers, for example. How do you get in the parking garage? So it has more of a pedestrian bias. And the dimensions of this is generally about 40 feet in width, enough area to accommodate seating and a separate walkway. And it may look something like this with trees, special pavement, outdoor seating, and doors and activity along it. So it's not a backwater. It's the kind of place you want to assemble along. To create shade, there may be other elements, and those might be interchangeable during the season. So this also provides that, again, this common thread of elements that tie the north to south. So it's distinctive, almost a breadcrumb sort of thing, where you can follow along simply because there's some visual clues along the entire route. We'd also like to make sure that there's some recall to the history and the character, so it's not placeless, but this reflects the culture and the history of Gilbert. So there may be something that's related to the canal system. The living room plaza, the key component of this is to ensure that it's a multi-purpose space. So there needs to be an area at least 150 by 150 for farmers markets, a concert or other activities within the district, and then there would be some other areas, whether they're green or public art or a covered shade structure within this area as well. And those are listed here. One of the key ideas here is really to take the car out of play to a large part and design Page and Ash's curveless. So the cars would move through here, and during large events that those roadway areas could be utilized for assembly areas or setting up booths for farmers markets or other activities. So this would be just the only areas where we anticipate roadways being closed in the district, along Ash and along Page within this district during special events. And that wouldn't occur very often, but we designed the streets to accommodate that. So again, here's some images of that with water and coverings and seating areas through the plaza. And here's an example of a shade structure. It could be glass, or it could be covered, and a number of other ideas along with this. But the intent is to provide areas where you can get relief from the summer suns, because we're going to have a considerable amount of paving as well. And there should be some fun things as well. Maybe there's lighting in the pavement or other elements that make this joyful and fun. There's options. There may be areas where we may want to increase some of the green area. So it might look something like this. We probably discourage change in grade. That reduces the flexibility of space, but the general character might have some of these elements. Vaughan itself needs to be a distinctive street, and the intent of Vaughan is to pick up some of the clues from Gilbert Road, which has the covered walkways, and maybe reinvent those in a 21st century version of Gilbert Road. And at the same time, we want to learn from the successes of areas that have done arcades well. So this is Bologna in Italy, and while this is very ornate, it's probably not what we'll see on Gilbert, there are characteristics here that we do want to incorporate, and those are a very wide pedestrian area where you can set up tables and it's not crowded, and then we want it high so that it is not claustrophobic. So we anticipate the minimum height of this arcade to be at least 20 feet wide, and the width to be at least 15 feet wide as well. So what would that look like? So this is looking at Vaughan towards the east. You see the university building in the background and the proposed improvements on the right, and a blow-up of that. So you've got 2 lanes of travel. You've got curbside parking, interrupted by trees and planting beds, and then on the edges of the roadway are 2 sidewalks that are brick and covered walkways in the arcades. And a plan view would look something like this. The brick sidewalks, you see the dots, those are where the columns of the arcades are. And then where the buildings aren't continuous, you could even extend that arcade to tie them together. So you create these wonderful little courts and plazas and special spaces, and you're always under shade. So think of a 110-degree day, you don't have to go out in the sun. So there's an added benefit for this. And there's some flexibility from the development committee as well, for the development community as well. So you could either build the arcade freestanding with no building over it, but to extend the building, get a little bit more use over the arcade on upper floors, you can build over it. And that's what this is intended to illustrate, the general characteristics of that. And the sense of intimacy and the festival character of the lighting and other elements, the landscape that would occur along this roadway. A special and different street that is unique to Gilbert. With that, it's time to fill out a response sheet, and the response sheet looks something like this. So it includes that fundamental concept and a couple of questions that we are requesting concerning the proposal. So here it is again. There's an opportunity to mark up the graphic, change it if you like. But the key component of the response sheet is really filling out this ballot, if you will. And we've got a column for yes, if you agree with the proposal. If you don't, you can mark no. Or if you've got another idea, that's welcome as well. And you can check other and then write down some comments that might explain your rationale for another comment. So to refresh your memory again, the North Anchor is office focused around the commons. The District Core has development around the plaza and also along Vaughan. The South Anchor has development focused at the intersection of Elliott and Gilbert with parking behind it. And then the essential public amenities include the Commons, which is halfway between Juniper and the canal, and it extends from Ash to Gilbert. A new Vaughan ventilator provides access, west access, that relieves traffic along Gilbert and provides a focus area for new retail. A neighborhood park that serves the provides an amenity for those areas east of Gilbert Road that don't have that today, where that doesn't occur today. And the new plaza, that living room, that Instagram moment for Gilbert that builds off of the existing tower and Hale Center. And the pedestrian and bike Paseo that has the bias towards the pedestrian and the cyclist that provides a common thread throughout the district. So the next steps, after all the information is compiled from this initial master plan concepts, will be presented at the end of March, along with some initial thoughts for the overall redevelopment plan. That's the presentation, and thank you for listening.